Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a meeting of the Springfield Township Board of Trustees. It is April 8th, 2014, approximately 5:38 p.m. I would ask for the roll call, Mr. Burning.
Yes, Mr. Holler. Mr. Burning? Here, present. Ms. McFarland?
Present.
Mr. Honolaw?
Present.
All the trustees are present.
Next, I would ask everyone to stand, and I am going to ask Patrick Chalk, who is here as an Eagle Scout, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would, please, Patrick.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Patrick, if you would come up here just briefly, we wanted to congratulate you. We'll walk down.
I would like to, this is a great honor to have Patrick here. Kyle has done a great job as far as an Eagle Scout. He actually, what I was so impressed with at his ceremony is that he has achieved about 49 merits right there. And I'm going to ask him to just explain the project that he completed to get his Eagle Scout. But it's outstanding that a young man has achieved that many awards. I think he may be one of the few, or maybe the only one, that's achieved that many awards in his lifetime so far as an Eagle Scout. So, Kyle, can you tell us a little bit about your project, please?
Yes, I can. So my project was at John Wesley United Methodist Church, which is out about right on the edge of Fairfield. And what I did was I built a tricycle path for their early learning center right next to this playground that they had. What we did was we drew out a design. It looks more of like a trapezoid. And we cut out all the grass. We put in wooden stakes. And then we filled that up with concrete. Now, the other thing we had to do was there was a fence that was blocking off the playground. Now, we had to take that out. And we were planning on putting it straight across the opposing side that would go right to the wall. But we ran into trouble with that with the fire marshals, since that went against the code, because they had a fire exit right there. So we had to redesign the whole thing, making the fence go all the way around in a square back to the gate. That way it was in code. And so that added a lot more cost to the whole thing, but we were able to get it. And the other thing that we had to do is, after the fence and the concrete, is we put in a mulch. We used wood mulch, put in the middle of this interior field of the whole path, so that, because eventually there was another project that they put in a balance beam, and they had to have a safe ground there so that the children could be able to play there and not get hurt. So that was my whole project. That took from about June of last year till about the beginning of October. And that included fundraising, getting it all started, and doing all the work. So the reason why I chose it was because John Wesley is where we do our meetings, is where our troop is held at, it's where we're chartered, and I wanted to give back to that. So I talked to their early learning center person there, Beth Heindorf, and we sat down, discussed. I asked her what she wanted, and she told me about the tricycle path, and so that's what we decided to go for. And so I'm very glad that I was able to do that for her.
Thank you, Kyle. Would you all give him a hand, please? Because the thing that I found outstanding was the number of badges he achieved. And the one right here, which you can't see, is his proudest badge. And when I heard him describe why that badge was so important to him, I said, well, we have a potential president or somebody on the bridge, you know? So he's got a lot of things to be proud of. We're proud because he lives in Springfield Township. So thank you, Kyle. Thank you. And before we continue, I always give homage to the parents, and his parents are right here with him. And without his parents' support all along this way, he wouldn't be where he is today. So I just want to give special honor and thanks to his parents as well. Thank you.
Next this evening on our agenda, we have Katie Wheatmartian, and she's here from Hamilton County DD Services Bureau, and she's going to give us a presentation.
Hi, my name is Katie Wheatmartian, as he said, and I am a service facilitator with Hamilton County Developmental Disability Services, but I'm here as a volunteer tonight. And the reason why I'm here as a volunteer is because I want to let you know that we do have an issue on the May 6, 2014 ballot for the Hamilton County DD Services. I, like many people in Cincinnati, come from a large German Catholic family, and my mother's oldest sister, my Aunt Louise, was born with cerebral palsy in 1933. When she reached the 5th grade, her teachers told my grandmother that she could no longer attend school as they did not have anything else to teach her. I can remember when I was a child, my aunt would help me practice writing, and she loved to do that because she had learned how to do that in school. However, her educational opportunities were very limited. This is one reason why I am passionate about the work that we do at Hamilton County DD Services and what it does for the people in our community. Our mission is to assist people with disabilities and their families to achieve what is important to them. It is also why I am grateful that an organization like Hamilton County DD Services exists. Thousands of adults and children in Hamilton County have been served by HCDDS for over 35 years due to the generous financial backing of taxpayers. The DD Services Levy, or Issue 3, provides 71% of our organization's operating funds, and this levy will be on the ballot May 6, 2014. And it will not raise your taxes, it is a renewal levy. The funds provided by this levy, they assist with providing a full range of educational, vocational, and residential programs for adults and children served by Hamilton County DD Services. As a service facilitator, my job is to connect adults with disabilities to the programs and services that are important to them. For example, I may assist a 20-year-old man with autism with finding a job or job coaching services, or I may work with a 40-year-old woman and her family with Down syndrome, or a 40-year-old woman with Down syndrome and her family to find residential or social and recreation opportunities. For children, we provide early intervention services in the family's homes. We also provide school-age children opportunities within their home school district. And additionally, we operate 2 schools, Margaret Ross in Bridgetown and Bobby Fairfax in Madisonville. In addition, we have satellite classrooms around the county, and we offer transition services to adolescents. For adults, we offer vocational and non-vocational services, such as our 4 adult centers in Bridgetown, New Burlington, Madisonville, and in, Evendale. We also have contracts with 8 organizations such as Goodwill Industries on Springfield Pike, REM of Ohio in Tri-County, and Easter Seals Tri-State in Blue Ash. Residential services for adults are offered through organizations such as Ohio Valley Residential Services, Catholic Residential Services, GraceWorks, and many others. Additionally, we assist adults and children with finding adaptive equipment, home modifications, or other community services that are needed. Chances are very, very good that you know somebody who, it may be a friend, a family member, or a neighbor who receives and benefits services from Hamilton County Developmental Disability Services. We welcome visitors at any of our locations. We do ask that you would contact our Director of Community Relations, Jenny Dexter, if you would be interested, or speak to me after my presentation. And I would ask that you would support us on May 6, 2014, and vote yes for Issue 3. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie. Next on our agenda, Mr. Burning, our fiscal officer, do you have a report?
Yes, I just request a motion to approve receipts, warrants, payroll expenditures, updated and current revenues and reports for the period. Do I have that motion?
So moved.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
And then I just want everyone to know that all financial reports are available for viewing at the administrative offices weekdays during regular business hours.
Thank you, Mr. Burning. Next, moving on to approval of minutes. We have minutes from a January 7th, 2014 JED's public hearing, a January 14th, 2014 regular meeting, a January 28th, 2014 regular work session, February 11th, 2014 regular meeting, and a February 25th, 2014 regular work session. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved.
Next, under departmental action and discussion items, Mr. Hennenkamp, do you have a report for us?
I do, Mr. Honorable. Just two action items tonight. The first is to seek board's authorization to renew the township's property and casualty insurance with the Ohio Plan, Inc. Our renewal came in at about 5% increase, roughly, give or take. We did have property value increases of about $750,000, and we did add a new vehicle to the list, so that accounts for some of that increase. But at this time, just need a motion from the board to allow me to renew the policy as mentioned.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next, we have a liquor permit. This is a transfer from Forer Incorporated, doing business as Express Market, to the Hamilton Market Enterprises, Inc., also doing business as Express Market. Chief, I don't believe there's any opposition to that transfer. So would ask that the board authorize for us to submit the customary letter to Liquor Control indicating there is no objection to that transfer.
Do we have a motion authorizing the township to submit such a letter?
So moved.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
The only other items I have is just under discussion is our personnel update. In the fire department, did accept the resignation of Chad Webb, who's a part-time firefighter. His resignation was effective March 28th. And in the police department, we did hire part-time police officer Deshaun Brooks. His effective date is March 25th, and accepted the resignation, or not the resignation, but the retirement of Clayton Smith after 25 years. I think we all know Clayton well, and we'll miss him and wish him well in his new duties in Florida. So Clayton did retire as of March 31st, 2014. And it's getting to be that time of season, Chief, for hydrant maintenance, so maybe ask Chief Leininger to just bring everybody up to date. They'll be seeing firefighters throughout the neighborhoods doing maintenance, seasonal maintenance on hydrants.
90 days, we started our fire hydrant maintenance April the 1st, and we'll continue through July the 1st. We have 1,762 fire hydrants in Springfield Township. Each one will be serviced. That includes flowing it. We lubricate the threads, and then we also exercise all the moving parts of that hydrant. So we'll be in the neighborhood. Some you'll see a pickup truck with one firefighter. You may see a fire engine with several firefighters. It depends on how many hydrants we have on a particular street, and sometimes it's more productive to go there with a fire truck and then disperse firefighters and knock them all out at one time. So you'll see us in the area. Feel free to come out and talk to us and let us know how we're doing. And we'll have those fire hydrants ready to go by the 1st of July. Thank you.
Chief, I know in the past, is there notice required for residents? I mean, sometimes that flushing that hydrant, does that give notice to residents that we're doing that?
We typically don't. And the reason for that, Mike, is that we can't commit to a set schedule.
Okay.
Because of just the activities of the days, the run volume, the weather. So we're constantly doing this as kind of a fill-in based on our activities of the day. But occasionally, because we're moving water, that it may churn up water a little bit. If they have any discoloration in the water, that's normal. But if they have any concerns, they're welcome to contact me, and I will deal with them directly.
We have a resolution later for the meeting dealing with the initiation of some text amendments, and I'm going to ask Chris to kind of bring us up to date as to what those amendments are. I know the board's aware of it, but just kind of rehash what this resolution will entail.
Thanks, Mike. The two issues that the text amendment resolution deals with later on in the meeting is, as the board is aware, for some time we've been discussing the issues or concerns involving electronic message board signs in residential areas. Specifically, we've had, I guess, complaints and concerns regarding churches that have installed these in residential districts and some of the potential negative effects that those have on a residential area have been brought to the attention of the board. And as you know, the board directed staff to review that issue and come up with potential zoning regulations that may try and mitigate some of those negative effects that those signs could have in residential districts. And because of that, the zoning text amendments that are before you this evening would require that any electronic message board sign being proposed in a residential zoning district would be considered a conditional use and subject to the review and approval of the Board of Zoning Appeals, so that they may either disallow that particular proposed sign in that particular area because of the negative effects it may have on the surrounding residential properties, or they may place conditions upon that approval so that it may mitigate any of those concerns that may be prevalent there next to the residential houses where this sign would be located. So it would give the Board of Zoning Appeals an opportunity to review those and allow them in certain situations, but may disallow them in others. Additionally, the other part of the resolution would deal with the Hamilton County Housing Court has reviewed our zoning code and suggested a change that would deal with people that are in control of properties and how you define who's in control of a piece of property in relationship to who, if there was a violation, who would be responsible for that violation. So they wanted to more clearly define that in accordance with what they want to see as a court, and had asked us to make several changes to the zoning code to reflect those. And those are reflected in the attachment associated with the resolution as well. So it basically just allows us to utilize the housing court for zoning violations, whereas otherwise you'd have to go to the court of common pleas, and you don't get the same results, so to speak, by using the court of common pleas versus the housing court. So those are what the changes are, and if there's any questions, obviously we take those now, but otherwise I think the board is aware those were coming because obviously the board directed staff to draft them. So this will initiate the process. It doesn't approve the actual zoning amendments at this time. It just initiates the process so that the zoning commission would review and make a recommendation, as well as the county planning commission. Then it will come back before the board for final approval of the actual text amendments to the code.
So in essence, we'll be able to respond in a much more, I guess, a quicker manner to rectify or correct the situation versus going to court?
I don't know if it's necessarily quicker. It may be, but the difference is right now when you go to court of common pleas, obviously those judges are dealing with a lot of other issues other than just zoning or property issues. And sometimes zoning cases get lost in the shuffle and don't get the attention that they probably actually deserve. And the housing court deals only with property-related issues. So the housing court is better able to deal with those problems and are more knowledgeable about zoning issues and property maintenance issues.
Okay.
And I think, Chris, from what I've read here, the big difference is this person in control definition is stated broadly, and it includes more, I think there's a typo there, but mortgagors, yeah.
The biggest difference is it actually allows now that if a mortgage company forecloses on the property,
They're liable.
the housing court is considering them a responsible party to that property.
Correct. And they can be subject to fines and
Yes.
things if they don't
Right,
abide by the court's orders.
exactly.
So I think that's the biggest thing, sir. It strengthens the court's ability to issue orders in these cases. Okay.
Boy, Joe, the only other thing I have is, I know you have the departmental activity reports, but then I'd ask Kim to bring us up to date on community events.
Thank you. We have, tomorrow, actually, we're bringing a Shakespeare production with the support of an Arts Wave grant. That event is free, and it is at 7:00 p.m. at the Grove Banquet Hall. We've been working with a lot of high school teachers who are offering extra credit for actually attending the production, and it's meant to supplement what they're teaching already in the schools here locally. Tomorrow is also the last day for people to purchase tickets for our Community Day at the Reds event. That is going to be a Reds game on Monday, April the 14th, and proceeds to those ticket sales go to education in the community. On April the 18th, we're bringing Playhouse in the Park in for a free show, and on April the 25th, the Arts Enrichment Council is doing their first dinner theater of this year with OTR Improv.
Thank you, Kim. Anything else, Mr.
No,
Hankamp?
that's all I have.
That's it? Okay, very good. Next then, we'll move on to board resolutions this evening. The first resolution we have is Resolution 24, 2014, establishing assessment for abatement of nuisance and certifying same to the Hamilton County Auditor. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded. Mr. Burning? Aye. Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Harnlaw?
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Next, we have Resolution Number 25, 2014. This is a resolution to initiate text amendments related to electronic message board signs in residential zoning districts and related to defining those in control of property per Section 5.08 in the Springfield Township zoning resolution. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded. Mr. Burning? Aye. Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Harnlaw?
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Next, we have a resolution number 26, 2014. This is a resolution establishing grants equal to the earning tax paid by township residents who work in the Joint Economic Development Zone or the Joint Economic Development District, and grants equal to the net business profits tax paid by businesses which are owned principally 50% or more by township residents and located in the Joint Economic Development Zone or the Joint Economic Development District, dispensing with a second reading and declaring an emergency. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded. Mr. Burning?
Aye.
Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Harnlaw?
Aye.
Resolution carries.
We have two Mr. Burnings here.
That's right. Aye.
Next, we have
Just as a clarification, you need
Yeah,
two
can we-
motions on that. Motion to suspend the rules for the reading on 2 separate days, and then to pass it as a resolution.
Okay. Well, thank you, Laura. All right. On resolution number 26, 2014 that I just read, do we have a motion to suspend the rules? Do I have to say and declare it as an emergency?
Just do suspend the rules for 2 readings first, and then pass it as an emergency.
All right. Just suspend the reading of the 2 readings of the motion, of the resolution. Do we have that motion?
So moved.
Seconded. Mr. Burning? Aye. Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Harnlaw?
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Next, do we have a motion to pass resolution number 26, 2014 as an emergency?
That's correct.
So moved.
Seconded. Mr. Burning? Aye. Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Harnlaw?
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Thank you, Laura.
I apologize, it's a home rule resolution, and there's
That's all right. That's why
nothing that really designates it as that, but
That's why we have you here. Next, we have resolution number 27, 2014, designating the Springfield Township, Hamilton County, Ohio, CIC, Inc., as the economic development agent for Springfield Township, authorizing the law director to prepare an agreement with the Springfield Township, Hamilton County, Ohio, CIC, Inc., to provide for services pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 1724.10B13, and authorizing the township administrator to execute such agreement on behalf of the township. Do we have a motion?
So moved. And
Second.
I just want to say, I've reviewed these, the previous resolution and this resolution, and it seems to be pretty clear and understanding, so I'm very comfortable with making that motion.
Seconded. Mr. Burning.
Aye.
Ms. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Honalaw.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Next, we have Resolution Number 28, 2014, authorizing financial and other assistance pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 505.701 to the Springfield Township, Hamilton County, Ohio, CIC, Inc., to defray administrative expenses. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Burning.
Aye.
Ms. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Honalaw.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Next, we have Resolution Number 29, 2014, which is an appropriation adjustment within the State Law Enforcement Fines Fund 2906. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Burning.
Aye.
Ms. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Honalaw.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Next, we have Resolution Number 30, 2014, which is a supplemental appropriation within the general fund. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Burning.
Aye.
Ms. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Honalaw.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
And finally, we have Resolution Number 31, 2014, revising authorized township signatories and contract users for corporate management agreement, ACH, for purposes of executing township financial and banking processes and procedures with Northside Bank and Trust Company. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Burning.
Aye.
Ms. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Honalaw.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Under old business, do we have any old business before the board this evening?
I have none at this time.
Under new business, do we have any new business before the board?
No.
No.
Don't have any at this time.
No.
All right. With that, we will come to citizens' participation, which is the part of the meeting where anyone who is here has the right to address the board. We ask that everyone else in the room remain quiet so we can hear what that person has to say. We would ask that you come to the podium and you state your name and address. Yes, sir.
Kyle Hufford, I live on Pringle Drive. With regards to the CIC stuff, I was just wondering, first of all, I went to Chris's meeting at the Pioneer Club yesterday, and that was the first time that we had heard anything about the business owners also receiving the grant on the net business profit. I was just kind of curious how that came about.
I think, Mr. Hufford, the situation, the rationale that pertains to giving that kind of an economic development grant to citizens also applies to businesses. As much as we want citizens to move to Springfield Township, to continue to reside here, we want the same thing for business owners, and the thinking kind of follows the same pattern.
Just a clarification, business owners who own a business in Springfield Township.
And live in Springfield.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
That's
Right.
what I meant. But I was just wondering, because I hadn't heard that before. It was the first time I had heard it yesterday. And then I was also curious why you chose the 50% number as far as the ownership on the business. And the reason that I'm wondering myself is I own 51% of one of my businesses, and my partner owns 49%, so I won't have to pay the tax. She will. Our other business is 50-50, so you know, we would actually both be covered there. But, I mean, what if somebody has like a three-way partnership or something along those lines?
I don't think you understand it. You want to explain it to me?
It says 50% ownership or more. Yeah. So I own 51%, and my partner owns 49 in one of them. So I would be exempt, but my partner would have to pay it? Is that correct?
Go ahead, Laura.
The rationale is just to dry it somewhere. I mean, the concern you have is that the smaller the percentage is, the less likely the resident's going to be in the township to be living in.
We're both township residents.
Right. It was just a number picked to make it more reflective of what they were trying to achieve. Wasn't designed to do any particular thing. And certainly, we had no idea what your business arrangement was, so.
Nor do I think you have any right to know that, but that's all I have. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the board this evening?
I'm Tina Marie Prendizito. I just had a question related to the same issue. I know it's going to take a lot of work to do all this work with taking the JED's money and then servicing the grants and everything. Why isn't it made simpler where residents are just exempt? If that's your goal, to give the money back to the residents or to give the money back to the residents who are business owners, why go through all those extra steps that creates extra work, extra expense? Also, at the meeting, someone said that a read of paperwork is very complicated. So why put the residents through all that? And like I said, it's going to take money away from the township to do all that administrative work. So what's the rationale between doing it as taking the tax and then giving grants back versus just, if that's your goal to make the residents whole, why don't you just make them exempt to begin with?
Well, Tina, I think to answer your question, it's required by law, and I'll have Laura comment on this, but we're only doing this the way that the JED's law says you have to do it. That's the main reason. As far as it taking money away from the township, we have a contract with Mount Healthy that they get paid X amount for the administrative part, so it doesn't really affect the township, is I think the way I would look at it. But Laura, you have any comments on that?
The grant is a legally permitted way to do this residential grant. It's done in other communities. It's just the way the trustees determined to proceed in this manner. It's going to be administered through the CIC, so that assists. And it really, the paperwork that the residents will do is not read a paperwork.
Is the CIC that's administrating, are those all volunteers or are those paid positions?
No, they're not paid positions.
So they're all volunteering?
Employees of the CIC.
And then, I'm sure even with them being volunteers, there's legal expenses, like having Laura oversee all this. There's still cost involved to doing it that way. So I just, that's why I had the question, because it doesn't seem like the most efficient way to do it. But you're saying that's how it has to be done, right?
Says that's how we have to do it.
Okay, that clarifies it. Thank you.
Just to clarify, you can't legally exempt people from a local earnings tax. That's the reason. You can't exempt people from paying the tax, but you can offer them a grant to basically pay what they paid in the tax back. You can't exempt them.
But in essence, we're just following the law related to.
Just so we're clear, the law doesn't require you to create a residential incentive grant. So that's not part of the law. That's,
No, but to rebate the earnings, you have to have.
yes, you
This
have to
is
have
the
a
way you have to
mechanism
do
by
it.
which to do it. Chris is right. The first part is, to your question, you can't exempt residents from it. So the JED's law does not allow us to pick and choose who pays it. But it does allow in several other communities, I believe it's Union and Claremont County and Sycamore and Hamilton County have created programs like this. Ours is very similar, where they have offered the residential incentive grant back to their residents to allow their residents who are already paying the property tax to receive this grant. And in turn, you're trying to encourage more people to move into the township, which will in turn, these are the people that are frequenting these businesses. So it's kind of helping the businesses by offering the incentive to the residents. That's the concept. But why we've done it that way is for that reason, because you can't simply exempt them. As Laura's saying, we haven't totally worked out the program, but we've looked and modeled of what the other communities have. They're not filling out read a paperwork. The application to get the grant is one page and requires very little information. Basically, you attach the W-2 showing the amount of taxes you paid. That's for an individual. Now, for a business owner, obviously, they're going to have to submit a few more to get the net business profits, there'll be additional paperwork they'll have to submit. But basically, it's attaching a copy of your W-2, proving your proof of residency. It's a one-page, something that would probably take 5 minutes to fill out. It's pretty simple.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that.
I'd just like to say something. If you remember, Tina, you were the one who suggested that we look into this whole process regarding the community improvement
Well,
program. the
I'd
CIC.
never heard of a community, I mean, there's been some falsehoods. What happened is Mike was explaining at one of the meetings that it's, in his opinion, it was fair for people working in the township to pay this tax because residents pay for various services out of their property taxes. And the rationale was these people working in the township are using these services as well. And what I said was, well, then, isn't there a case, if you're following that line of logic, that residents who work in the township would be paying double? That was what I said. The CIC, I never brought it up. I never heard of a CIC. You told me about it from Sycamore. So I just want to correct, I was not the one who brought up the idea of the CIC.
Well, no. You brought up that it wasn't fair that residents that were paying property taxes had to pay the JED's tax because they were already paying high property taxes.
Right, I was
what
following
the
Mike's
board
logic
did-
and pointing out
Can I
what he had
finish?
said, that it was incongruent. And it's
Can I
still,
finish? Can I finish? So what the board did is they took your statement and said, maybe that isn't fair. Maybe we should look at a way that the residents won't be part of this tax because they are paying the property tax. Now, the CIC was the way in state law you could do that. So that's the only way we could do it with the way the law is written. So I mean, it was your idea that they look at that. They looked at it, and the CIC is just the vehicle that they need to use to do what you suggested.
well, I'd like to point out that following that logic, then business owners that don't even reside in the township, if they own business property in the township, they are paying those property taxes. So if the point of the JEDs is, well, you're getting services that you're not paying for because people who own property, residents, are paying that in their property taxes, business owners that live elsewhere but own property in Springfield Township would also be doubly taxed because they'd be paying property taxes for those services as well as paying the JEDs. So my whole point was not suggesting this action or that action. I was just pointing out the incongruity and saying, by your logic and your rationale of why this is being done, it should be consistent and make sense. So that was my point. And then I had a question about the whole thing with the grants and everything. In the contract, of course, there's no mention of that. And, I have no doubt that you are intending to do what you say, but what guarantee is there? Like with the city of Cincinnati, when things didn't go the way that they hoped it would with the stadium deal, they pulled back things that were promised. So how do the residents and business owners know that, let's say a couple years down the road, 10 years down the road, you say, it's not bringing in as much money as we hoped, so we're going to take away that grant program we had for residents? What guarantee is there in place that that program will be in effect for the 70 years that the JEDs will be in effect?
Well, I guess I can tell you this, Tina. I've been on this board 18 years. Whenever I made a commitment to the voters, I kept it. I haven't ever gone back on my word.
Well, it's 40 years and then 3 renewable terms of 10 years each for a total of 70 years.
Yeah, first of all, it isn't 70 years.
It's 40 years plus 3 10-year renewable terms, so that would be 70 years. That's where I got the 70 years from. If you want to nitpick, okay, it's 40 years plus 10 plus 10 plus 10.
Can I clarify why it isn't included in the contract? That's because the contract is an agreement between the township and the city of Mount Healthy.
Right.
The CIC grant, in effect, has nothing to do with the city of Mount Healthy. So we can't put something in a contract between the township and the city that has nothing to do with the city. Does that make sense?
Right. But
That's
is
why
there
it's not in the
something,
contract of the
is there something that the township can do in terms of making that something that's set and can't be changed?
Lord,
We've done it by a resolution.
they pass a resolution, but no more than anything else the board passes resolutions on.
They would have to rescind the resolution.
It would have to rescind the resolution.
So the resolution could potentially be rescinded. And like even if either by you or by future trustees, that could be rescinded, is that correct?
As could the JED's tax.
Okay.
This board could also rescind the JED's tax. They have the ability, and so does every future board and every governmental agency, to change the law. So I don't know that there's any body that can create any type of action that can never be changed. That's why you have boards, that's why you have councils, that's why you have elected positions.
Okay, I just wanted
That things change
clarification.
from day to day. I mean, I don't think there's any part of the tax code that's never going to change. So I think to answer the question, I think you know the answer to the question, things change. As you said, future boards could change it, they could eliminate, a new board could come in and eliminate the JED's tax completely. Future boards could eliminate every property tax the township has.
But you're saying
That is
that,
an option that they could take those types of things.
but
and put
as
those
of
things
right
in.
now, the full intention of the board is to keep the grant program in place for the full length of the JEDs. Is that what the board members are saying?
No, not at all. I will tell you that when the contract was drawn up, I insisted that there be a provision in it that if Springfield Township doesn't need the JEDs, we have a right to end it.
I guess I didn't
And
word
that-
my question well. What I meant was, you have intention of keeping the CIC in place as long as the JEDs is in place.
The grant.
Will the
Right.
grant stay in effect as long as the JED is in effect?
Is that your intention?
As
Yes,
far
it
as
is.
this board,
Yes,
yes.
it is. Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Okay, thank you.
Joe, it's probably worth mentioning, I think, because we're doing the grants program tonight with this resolution, and we've recently created the CIC. Obviously, the CIC and the grant are linked. The CIC is going to administer it, but as anyone that looks into the law, the CIC hasn't been created solely for this purpose. We have been talking about creating a CIC for probably upwards of 3 or 4 years.
Right, that's true.
And the CIC will do many, many things. This grants program is just one aspect of what the CIC and what CICs can do in other communities.
Will you talk a little bit about what a CIC
Well, I
can
mean,
do?
one of the things we've done tonight in the resolution that designated the CIC, I believe it was 27, 2014, is the CIC is designated as the economic development agent for Springfield Township. So basically what we're doing is we've talked, where we've taken and created an arts and enrichment program. What our hope is that eventually arts programs, events, and all of the activities that our residents are asking for, participating in, demanding, we're creating the arts and enrichment as a 501c3, so ultimately that can be moved into a nonprofit, receive charitable donations, and then hopefully someday operate as a completely separate entity from the township. Now, obviously, the township created it, so it has some oversight responsibilities, but from a financial standpoint, the idea is that sort of is handled privately and can be done privately. Similarly, that's what the CIC can do. Although it's a different part of the statute, it has different requirements, different obligations, it becomes the economic development agent for the township. It is what is going to then promote economic development, new business, new housing, all types of civic improvements in Springfield Township, we hopefully will take place through the CIC. The board of the trustees is also, and by law, there are certain percentages of board members that always have to remain on the CIC. And in the initial stages of this thing, generally the staff is going to be the CIC. We're going to be doing it. So there's not going to be a whole group of volunteers per se. There are board members. There are no paid board members on the CIC, and there are no employees of the CIC, but the resolution that we passed, which was 28, 2014, basically allows the township to be able to give the CIC some money. So those aren't additional things. Those were things that we would be spending in our own general fund in the Development Services Department. Instead, we're doing them through the CIC. Why? Because the CIC has certain advantages legally in the movement of property and to do certain economic development activities that it was intended for that are more cumbersome for a township board of trustees or the township itself as a local government to do, because the law wasn't really set up to do and act as a development company for your local government. These are not new things. They are done in many, many, many communities for a wide variety of the different things that a CIC can do. The Hamilton County Land Bank is created in a statute, I think in the same statute, in the same part of it. So there are different specific things that they can do, but there's a wide range of things. This grant program is one, it's going to be the first thing that it will probably do, but ultimately it's to develop, the CIC's been to develop Order Nursery, to develop other, and redevelop other properties in Springfield Township and increase our business space and do the types of activities and offer incentive programs, hopefully down the road, to businesses. So that's how we're going to grow our tax base, continue to do things for our business community as we have in the past. So I just don't want that to get lost, that it's just this CIC is being linked as being, just this residential incentive grant program.
Right.
It's one of the things, probably the first thing it's going to do, but ultimately, the thought is 5, 6, 7, 10 years from now, the CIC will be doing all kinds of things, and may at some point have a paid staff, and be funded from the development activities that are happening in Springfield Township.
And I think
Thank you.
that's important, what you just gave, i.e. as several examples, because that was my understanding as well. And even before you gave the examples, that it's going to benefit the residents and businesses of Springfield Township, Hamilton County, Ohio, among other things, promoting and developing residential, commercial, industrial, and economic growth of Springfield Township. And if we're going to be moving toward the future and preserving our township, that is something that's very critical that we need to continue to do. And that's what we'll be able to do with this CIC.
Yeah, the CIC was another recommendation from the neighborhood master plan. That it be created. So one of the reasons, we had talked back in about 2007 or 2008, I think it was, we were very near in doing the CIC. Fortunately, the market took its turn, from an economic development standpoint. We started to see the state take its activities, and we really it wasn't a priority at that time because we were fighting different battles. So
Sure.
that's, I don't want that to be linked purely as that we did this for the grant program.
Thanks, Mike.
It's not it at all.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else who'd like to address the board this evening? Yes, Robin.
NCIS night, so I got Robin Hendley, 6341 Ridgefield Drive. First of all, Civic Association hat. We're having our general meeting on April 28th. It'll be at 7 p.m. back at the Senior Community Center, Room A. 2 guests. John will be there discussing the roads issue, and that's kind of near and dear to my heart because it's my neighborhood that's going to be destroyed and rebuilt this spring, so I'm hoping he can give me some update to tell my neighbors, because everybody's knocking on the door saying, when do we have to start parking, down the road and all this kind of stuff. But he'll be talking about the road conditions in general and some ideas that he's had about addressing road improvements in the future. Also, Chris Gilbert will be there to talk about a number of the development projects. He's worked with the Civic Association. We've asked, how can we use our volunteership to help him and help the township. He'll also be addressing Jez questions as they come up. So we appreciate both of you coming. You don't have to be a member to be there. You're welcome to join us. Everybody's welcome. So that was one thing. Second issue, just want to make a comment. I've come to several of the meetings since the whole JEDS issue has went on. And Mike, I don't even think you remember, but the actual discussion of CIC goes back before the master plan. I moved here in '99, and the first week I bought my house, I came to the first meeting. And that was when you were just starting to talk about creating the development services position, and Chris's predecessor had not even been hired yet. She scoped out pretty broad skeleton, I guess, of what the scope of that department was going to be, and the creation of a CIC was in there, because I have it at home. And what brought it to my attention is I started to catch up on some of the meetings. And the January meeting, I believe, was a marathon for you. It was about 3.5 hours where you spent, Mike particularly, a complete overview of the history of where the JEDS was initially talked about. And that goes back to the master plan, certainly. So anyone that's got any holes in their knowledge level about the history needs to pop a beer, sit down on the computer, or go to the Waycross tapes and watch the January meeting, because it's all there. All it had me to do was to go back to some old files and start pulling some paperwork. But to dispute a few things that were said, a couple of individuals tonight mentioned, well, this was the first they heard of the CIC. No, it isn't, because I was in meetings. Let me finish. I was in meetings.
People at the podium speak.
I was in meetings where they were both in attendance and it was discussed. Now, putting that as a sideboard, The Civic Association, primarily Joe Gorman and I, we approached Mr. Hufford months ago and wanted to sit down and talk with him and share with him information that we had that Chris and Mike and others had shared with the Civic Association very, very early on when this JEDS was in the incubation stages. And unfortunately, we were rejected out of hand. And the exact words were, "I don't want to hear anything you've got to say." So we just gave up. I mean, you can't discuss with people anything when they have a closed mind, so we just let it go. CICs are not new. They go back to the 60s. I used to run one. It was called LADCO, Lima Area Development Corporation. It was formed in the early 60s, and in those days, most of them were for the sole purpose of being the inducing agent for industrial revenue bonds. And that's basically all LADCO did for 25 or 30 years. Then it started branching out a little bit as the bonds began to not become so attractive to the banks. And at that point, where I lived in Allen County, they went a different direction with what they did with development. But when I was in Illinois, we had one out there too. And they've since kind of shifted a gear a little bit. And I think they've recreated themselves a number of times over the years to fit the current needs-changing laws. So these are not new things. They're no secret backdoor meetings. They're very public. The boards are very structured. They have to have public-private participation, and the laws are extremely rigid on how they have to be operated, and there are rigid reporting requirements because I used to have to do all the paperwork. It's probably, in my opinion, the best model you could do as a township. If you were a municipality, if you were a county government, you might want to look at something different. Port authorities used to be great too until everybody started to get them, and then they kind of neutralized the inland port authority law, so that doesn't work quite so well. But I'm glad it's going forward. We talked about it at our Saturday meeting for the Civic Association Board. Everybody wishes that there was a different alternative for this. But I'll tell you what, I've spent a lot of time looking through old files and kind of revisiting history. I can't come up with anything. I don't know what your solution is, not when you're up against the recension of the local government tax, the loss of the estate tax, shrinking budgets everywhere. I don't know what the alternative is, but I will challenge any of the dissenters, if they can come up with a better idea, share it with all of us. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Robin. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board this evening? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Liliane Borlak. I come talk to you because I have a background in real estate. And when I was with my client, when they're looking for a house, the first thing they do is look at the neighborhood. They look at road to make sure they're in good repair. They look at houses to make sure they look good, and there are no bad-looking house in disrepair. They look at parks. They look at the activities that their family could join. It could be exercise, dance. They look at the park. They look at the community and senior center. All that is part of location. You know, you heard about location. They also look at school, at the police record, before they decide to look at houses. So if issue 13 does not pass, the road will look very bad. The neighborhood will start looking bad. House will not be taken care of. Park will be closed. Center, community center will be closed. People will not want to buy a house there. As a result, property value will go down. Crime will move in because the place will look bad. It's really too bad because we just had a recession. Real estate value went way down. But now they start going up. And if that issue does not pass, then it will go down and it will never go up again. So I encourage people who are living in Springfield Township to vote yes for issue 13, because it will keep property value up. Business will go up also in value. People will have money. And it will keep a quality of life that everybody is looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Claudette Denoma, Springfield Township. Today, the senior board met at the senior center, and they voted, and they did a proclamation. Springfield Township seniors endorse, Senior Inc., endorse issue 13 on May 6th, 2014 ballot, and encourage all residents of Springfield Township to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Yes, Mr. Hufford.
Can you talk twice?
Well, and you're here to address the board, not to start getting in conversations with our people.
I was told to come up here if I wanted to speak, so I just wanted to.
No, this is for citizens to speak to the board. If you want to speak to
Okay,
somebody
well, I've got
else
something to say to you too.
in the audience, then you can do that outside of our meeting.
Okay.
That's always been the rule.
So I would like to ask that you reconsider making the CIC grant for the business owners, since this was the first time we heard about that portion of the grant. I would like to ask that you change that to anyone who resides in the township and has ownership in a business, as opposed to the 50% number. Because it's kind of, I mean, if you look at my situation, I'm sure there's other situations. It is unfair that because one of my businesses I own 51% in and my partner owns 49%, that I qualify for the grant and she does not. I mean, do I have to restructure how my business is and make us both 50-50 so that we both qualify? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, we'll certainly take that into consideration.
Okay, well, thank you.
That's a good point. Thank you. Is there anyone else? We're kind of doing the one, we're not going to this isn't going to be going on and on.
When was the business portion added? Because at the last meeting it wasn't discussed. Can you just fill us in on that?
Joe, I could
Was the business portion added to the CIC?
probably talk about it. The only action that the board's taken was tonight. If you remember that a lot of questions came up during the meeting on January the 7th and I think on the 14th about the JEDs in general, and a lot of questions about the grants, and the response that was given was it hasn't been developed yet.
So,
It has been, the board has directed me to look at several alternatives, and this is what we put together. This is the first action that the
But
board's
in
taken.
my question, in the various meetings, the resident grant was discussed quite often. I mean, I know about that. I know about the CIC. I never claimed not to know about it. It's, since you've been discussing it. But is this not the first time in a meeting that you've discussed the business portion of the CIC, where the CIC grants would be also available to business owners? Tonight is the first time that has been mentioned in a public meeting, correct?
It's actually the action that the board took.
Right, and it's the first
We
time.
drafted several
There's
alternatives.
been discussions of all of
I know, I
this.
mean, at a public
there have
meeting,
been
this is the first time the
hours and
business
hours.
portion has been brought up. I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, we've been discussing.
And I'm not
Tina, we've
weighing
been
the pros or
discussing a lot of
cons.
things. We've talked about doing it a lot of different ways. And what we were trying to do from day one is to take care of the problem that the township is in due to cuts by the state and be as fair as we can to the residents of the township.
I just wanted a point of
That's what we wanted to
clarification
do.
that this was the first public meeting, because Robin seemed to be misinformed, and I just wanted to clarify, this was the first time you all have mentioned to the public the business part.
I think what she was referring to is the CIC.
CIC.
Oh, I have no doubt, I have no,
She was referring to the fact that the CIC had been brought up many times.
oh, that's correct.
That's what she
Yes.
was talking about, the
But,
CIC.
and we were saying
Right.
that this
I
is
will
the
tell you,
first we
there's
heard of the
another component
business
that-
part of the CIC. I just wanted to clarify so there was no misunderstanding in what we were saying.
Right. There was also
Thank you.
another aspect of the grant when we talk about the JED. I mean, most people don't realize that there is actually a JED district in Springfield Township, and we realized that we needed to include the JED as well. So as staff goes through and tries to put together any resolution or any legislation, we hear, people call about different things, we take input, and we present those things to the trustees. I think it's pretty clear that in the I think it was the January and possibly even the February meeting, we said we were working on this issue. There were several questions about the specifics, and the board was chastised for not having all the specifics, and they were told, we're working on that. So this is the final product of what much input has come from the public during these things, from things in which I've addressed individually with boards, and we've been crafting this,
Well,
yes.
thank you. I just wanted
So
clarification
it's in the
because.
JED, it applies to the JED as well as the JED-Z.
Okay,
And again, the other clarification is this whole thing obviously is moot if issue 13 fails. That's another component of the resolution, that if that issue fails, then obviously there's no residential incentive
okay.
grant program.
I just wanted clarification because I didn't appreciate it being said that we knew about this business portion when this is in fact the first time the business portion of
She
the
was saying the
CIC.
CIC was first talked about in 99. That's what she
Right.
said.
Right.
CIC is not just a grant
Okay,
vehicle.
I just wanted clarification from the board, to validate that this was the first time this business element was added to the CIC.
I don't know why you're saying that. We've had discussions about all kinds of issues
It's
of
the
this.
first, you may have had discussions, but in an actual
No,
public
in
meeting, it's the
public
first time it's
meetings,
been.
we've had discussions about, what about the businesses? How does this work? And as we sat here, and people will call you, and you'll talk to people, and they'll say, well, if it's, you'll be out on the street, or you'll be at Kroger's, and somebody will say, well, okay, you're going to have this JEDS. Does it make sense that it applies, just as you came here and said, well, it ought to apply to the residents, and people have said, well, maybe it ought to apply to a business too.
Well,
And-
in your own
and
literature
so-
and things on the website, up until this point, it has only mentioned a resident grant. So, I mean, there's no arguing that. There's nothing
no,
been,
exactly.
everything you read has been about resident.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
The
you.
action was taken tonight. Is that what you wanted us to say?
Is there anybody else that wants to address the board this evening? It appearing that there is not, I do believe that we have to adjourn into executive session for the discussion of personnel matters.
Actually, it's the employment of a public employee and to discuss current litigation.
Do we have a motion to adjourn into executive session for those purposes?
So moved.
Seconded?
Mr. Burning?
Aye.
Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Honolaw?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.